Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of AVD Monthly. That's right, AVD Monthly. I've got to train myself to say it that way. It just seems weird still, but I guess what, Rob, it's been 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I think about that.
3 or 4 months, and it makes sense, right? Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows, Linux, whatever comes next. It's the right name. I just got to make myself stop saying WVD.
Yeah, probably should have been that name to begin with. Yeah.
I think it was that name. I think they changed it before it went live, didn't they?
I think you're right. Like something like 2 weeks or something, and then the name changed.
Yeah. Well, I've got Rob Shaw with me. Rob, you've got a different role from when you very first started joining us. What's your role today?
So still global black belt. Strange terminology to basically mean kind of a principal engineer on 2 products. AVD, formerly WVD, and AVS, Azure VMware Solutions.
Yeah, well, both very important to the future of Azure for sure. I'm sure you're a busy guy.
Like everybody these days, right?
Yeah. Yes, 100% true. And I don't know what happens when we get back to the real world, the normal world, and we try to balance all the new busy with the old busy. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, or is this the new norm? Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know if I can survive the new norm. Well, we skipped last month, I think, and I think there was some stuff to talk about. Let's do this. Let's jump into the October 2021 updates for Azure Virtual Desktop, and then we will blend in the September ones if we have time towards the end of this. So the first one on the list is Azure Virtual Desktop support for Windows 11. I feel like we talked about this a little bit in the past, but where does that stand?
Yep. Yeah, I think the key thing is we made an announcement of it last time, and now what's nice is you'll see I believe 3 images that are available in the when you go into the gallery. So you could pick from, I think, Windows 11 Enterprise, Windows 11 Enterprise multi-session, and then the same thing with Office 365 already baked into it. So the nice thing is, the images are just right there for you to, ready to start with.
I'm glad you brought that up. I just got off a podcast with VMware a while ago. Gabe Knuth, who handles Horizon on Azure, as well as Horizon with vSphere on Azure. Both fall within your world a little bit, if not totally. And we were talking about the multi-session thing and whether or not that would work if you were running vSphere in an Azure environment. And he was probably the most succinct answer I've gotten is no, unless you're using native Azure. And Bill Sutton on my team brought up a couple weeks ago that a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're using the image that's made available through Azure. And then you just mentioned it here. So the Windows 11 image through Azure, whether it's single session, multi-session, and then the O365 image as well. That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah. I think what we find with a lot of customers when they're looking at AVD, whether it's on with VMware natively or with Citrix, what we find is that almost all of them, I think something like 95% of the VMs that are running in AVD by way of any one of those 3 control planes, they're leveraging the multi-session image, right? So that being now available with Windows 11, that's pretty cool. And I think one of the key drivers to that, I think 2 things. Well, one, I don't have to skin a desktop to make it, reskin a server image to look like a desktop. And I get the benefit of not having to pay for the RDS cal or the VDA cal, which is huge savings.
Yeah, that's important too. You just pointed out the lack of the need for a VDA. I had forgotten about that. I was talking to a customer last week. So if you're running a virtual desktop that you're connecting to that's in Azure, whether it's through VMware, Citrix, or straight up AVD, that VDA money goes away. That's important.
And I think the key differentiator there is if it's IaaS, then you may still need that or require that license. If it's the Win10 multi-user image, which is really only by way of AVD and can be connected via Citrix or VMware as well, that's how you can eliminate that cost. Now, that's due to entitlements you get from other things, say like M365, other licenses that give you access. So if you're licensing a lot of times a full desktop in support, then you're covered. So generally what we saw in the past was folks would have that license as well as then they'd buy a VDA or a session cal to be able to deliver, broker virtual desktops or published apps.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I love the fact that you didn't call it the VDA tax. I get tired of people calling it that because it's not. It's an entitlement that you get from one way or another. And in this case, M365 gets you that Windows entitlement. Yeah.
And I think for, a lot of times for on-prem environments where you feel like, hey, I already own this license for a desktop, here, that becomes true on the Win10 multi-user that, it gets eliminated.
Okay, next topic here. Well, I can't pass up something you said just now. You said Windows multi-session, and you said Windows with O365 built in. Is there such a thing as a Windows multi-session with O365 built in where you get the best of both?
Yeah. So, with that pre-built image, and I guess, to close the loop on that thought, folks can start with the gallery images, and that way Office is already baked in, or can be if that's the way you want it. And it's already optimized for VDI or, for a session host. So there's steps that are made to help that run better, that you don't have to go through and meticulously do the way you would have to do in the past when you're running, say, a XenApp server or a VDI delivered, VM.
Yeah, good. Okay, next topic on here, and you mentioned it as we went into the podcast recording, RDP short path now generally available. What is this thing and what does it do?
Yeah, so it's a name it's a little cloudy, right? When you hear it, what does that really mean? And to explain it, we kind of go back to the roots of WVD, right? And that in the very beginning, what we went to from a protocol standpoint is we went to an early kind of, let's call it version 7 of RDP. That even though we might have been whatever the version was at the time, 10, 11, where predominantly RDP in that instance and RDP in the wild has been leveraging UDP for several years, right? But that version of RDP that we went back to was actually TCP based. And that was done for some specific reasons, for some architecture pieces, so that we could make some changes to it, so the development team could, and to create the Azure Virtual Gateway connection so that it brokers everything and does add kind of a layer of security where you're not actually hitting that VM, you're proxying the connection to your session host or to your full desktop. In this case, what ShortPath does, RDP ShortPath does, is it makes a direct connection to the VM, right? There's reasons why you might not want to do that, but certainly there are reasons where we want to do that. Some of the things that have been driving this are requests for enhancements to multimedia, audio, video type connections. UDP, as probably everybody here knows, handles that better. It doesn't need to do acknowledgements of what packets were sent, because what happened 2 seconds ago is irrelevant in a video conference, right? It's what's coming next that's important. So ShortPath kind of gives us that ability where we make a direct connection from the endpoint to the VM that the user is connecting to. Yeah. Some of the benefits of that, we can set quality of service. So it enables you to set some of those markings using some of the other tools to be able to to set quality of service on whatever the packets are that are crossing over your network.
And how does that work? Does it reach out over the ShortPath connection and try to see if that works, and if it doesn't, then it falls back to the gateway? Do you know how that technically happens?
Yeah, so it's set up as a predominant connection for that typically for a specific host pool. So if that host pool is going to be predominantly audio video, or hey, we just want to use that for everything we're doing, then that host pool will be identified to leverage short path. And then it would be a fallback to use an access gateway connection. I just said access gateway, didn't I? Yeah. Wow.
That's showing your lineage. I'll leave it like that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so you'd set it up in some of the connection settings. There's some really interesting information. If you check out the blog that comes with that RDP short path announcement, and then some additional links that you can follow as far as how to configure it, even how to set up quality of service using some of the markers in your environment. Again, we're just kind of getting on board with it, so it's kind of a new service, but it's something we've been waiting for a while, especially especially for those audio video type requests.
Yeah. Screen capture protection updates. I think I know what this is, but why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so on the endpoint, right? To provide higher security, I can block the ability to do a screen capture from certain devices. And in the beginning, it was really just Windows devices when we made the first announcement. So the addition here is that now it's available in Gov Cloud as well as in China Clouds for Azure, and additionally for Mac OS, right? That's been something that's been requested as well. So really it's preventing me from being able to do a screen capture while I'm in my session, so that they did a screen capture, they just get a black window, right? Yeah. That's what they would see in place of that.
Yeah, I have to tell you, the first time I went to demo with that turned on and found out I couldn't demo was quite a it must be broken moment, and then I realized, oh no, that's what it's supposed to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, next one is Azure Active Directory domain join. Seems like something that would be a no-brainer. This actually refers to China a little bit. Tell me what this means.
Yeah, so AVD basically does a couple of things. The user accounts are actually coming from Azure Active Directory. That's not your normal just Active Directory. That's Azure Active Directory, which is a slightly lighter version and based in Azure only. The origin of the user accounts, of course, would be synced from a traditional AD environment. The VMs in Azure Virtual Desktop are actually still based as members of your traditional domain, right? So Active Directory, those VMs are joined to Active Directory. So what's happening here is that the VMs now can now have the additional option of being Azure Active Directory domain joined. And it sounds like we're kind of parsing words here about this, but it's really a big thing, in that what we see today is that big connections are needed to connect back into the on-prem environment and link to cloud. And there may still be other reasons for that, but that at least I may not have to have that for my VM joins, right? If I can have them just join Azure Active Directory, it might reduce the dependency on, say, some of those express routes or expensive connections to on-prem environments.
Will they have the extensive group policy management pieces, or will it be very light when it comes to that aspect?
Fairly light to begin with, but the goal is to kind of continue to add that. And you'll do most of that instead of then in really System Center, some of those configs. You'll be doing more of that in MEM today, right? There's a couple last hoops here in that things like profiles. So leveraging FS Logics today, it's still not there. It's coming, but today you'll be limited to things that don't require roamed profiles. It'll be really just those things that'll be local profiles, and partly, and at least of that would be related to some of those policy connections.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
that's been a big one coming, and some really large government agencies are really interested in this, where they don't want to bring legacy Active Directory forward. They want to shift, and really, if you think about those folks that are kind of greenfield Azure companies, this is a great way. They don't have to, build something that they may not need in the future.
I guess to be really specific, this one's talking about specifically being available in Gov as well as Azure China. It was available already in your, other deployments.
Yeah, correct.
And then you just hit on a good topic around greenfield deployments, where, if everybody could just start from scratch, having it in Azure AD and it be on par with the amount of policies, policies that could be deployed, that would be ideal. I guess the likelihood of that is somewhat low, but as people start to make this move, there are going to be situations where they can start at least part of their environment over.
Yeah, we've seen, like in divestitures and things, we're starting to see that come up where, hey, we'd really like to just do it this way if we can.
Yeah. All right, next topic is breaking change in Azure Virtual Desktop, Azure Resource Manager template. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I think there's just, if you're leveraging Azure Resource Manager templates, there may be some items that you'll have to modify to move forward. I haven't really, kind of invested in that. I haven't run into folks that are really, having issue here, but it may be things that if you're, maybe using automated tools that are leveraging those templates, you may have to make some slight changes.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last one here for October is auto scale preview, public preview. This is something that some of the more legacy players have had just for a little while, and now it looks like Microsoft is showing again the commitment to try to keep this up to speed and best of breed. Tell us about auto scale.
Yeah, obviously the goal here is to save cost, right? If you're in an on-prem environment, shutting off VMs is a nice to have. If you're in cloud, it's a must-have, right? To be able to turn off unused VMs. So we've had, of course, Citrix and VMware and other partners, and some partners who only focus on things like auto scaling have been doing this. But today, this announces the public preview of an auto scale feature that'll turn off or turn on VMs based on scale or based on demand, as needed.
So, things like this, features like this, these are big steps in being on par with the other vendors in the space. Obviously there's more, but Microsoft's investment in the protocol, Microsoft's investment with autoscale, Microsoft's investment in things like maybe session recording either now or in the future, things that are, some check boxes, features the other guys have. Other than the fact that on premises and multi-cloud, which you can kind of tell us if Microsoft ever plans to go any of that direction, you guys are really nipping at the heels of the legacy players.
Yeah, certainly not to take anything away from our partnership with, the different ISVs out there, like Citrix and VMware, who've, been at this a long time. And, we're constantly making improvements to the core features. Of course, Citrix and VMware continue to, increase, the sets of tools that they deliver. But these are tools that customers have requested from the beginning. Improvement in audio, video, improvement in the protocol stack. Being able to turn off unused VMs. These are key, and soon, we may be talking about being able to hibernate some of those as well. That's another feature down the road type thing. So I think these are important. They're the features that customers have been asking for, and the product team is delivering on.
Yeah. Well, I dropped one little one in there. I was kind of hoping to see if you answered it. The on-premises side, I know you and I had a brief conversation around like Azure Stack Hub kind of stuff. I think that's what you might call it these days. I'm not sure what the actual name is. But to be able to do some on-premises AVD, is that something you've heard any more about or something you could comment on?
So I think we're getting closer to that. I know like the hyper converged Azure is now a reality. And that team is anxious to start working with the possibility of putting VMs there. I haven't seen it yet, so we'll have to stay tuned for where that goes. But I think now that on premises kind of HCI space exists for Azure now, could be. And I know there's some good topics for anybody who's attending Ignite next week. I know there's some topics there for HCI, which is really the Azure stack on-prem. And I think some of our partners like Dell have some meetings available for those.
Yeah. So Rob, can you go on record and commit to Ignite in person in 2022?
By what? What do you mean?
I'm joking. I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to give you a hard time.
Oh,
I'm ready for in-person conferences. I can't attend virtual ones and pay attention and not get distracted. I need the real deals back. If you can make that happen, that'd be great.
I know. I don't think you and I've shook hands in 2 years now, my friend.
Well, that wraps up the October of 2021s. Let's hit the September ones kind of quick. The first one is Azure portal updates. I think that's just kind of a consistent work in progress around the ARM platforms or ARM templates or ARM versions of the Azure portal, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure, what we were really kind of pointing to here. There will always be Azure portal changes. Anybody who's worked in Azure for any length of time, folks have ideas of how to streamline the GUI and the interface. So those are inevitable and constant as far as some of those updates that happen.
Well, that's one of the benefits. You get this constantly improving place to do your business and you don't have to do the upgrades.
It is. Sometimes it looks a little different when you go in there to do something. But yeah, hopefully always for the better.
Yeah, you can't be that old IT curmudgeon that wants nothing to change. If you are, then you're in the wrong business.
That's for sure.
This next one kind of highlights back to something we talked about in October, and that's Azure Active Directory join. This must be the generally available for the non-government in China, which we covered, even government in China now available. Yep. So this is just kind of rehashing of it.
Yep.
Azure China. Well, it's really interesting if we do the month and then the month before, because we just kind of roll between the two. Azure China AVD sounds like was made available in September, and then by October we're already adding features to it. That's progression.
Yeah, and generally, not China's a new thing for us from the AVD side, but for at least if it falls in line with the same trajectory that we've seen with GovCloud. Things that release in commercial, it's ideally that they're about a month behind. So when we go GA, it should go preview, and then a month later should go GA is generally what we're seeing.
Yeah. And then the last one here for September, automatic migration module tool. What is this thing?
Yeah, so if you had VMs that you had in the earlier version, it just gives you the ability to migrate those. I don't really see folks that have had a requirement to that. Mostly I saw folks just build new and they didn't migrate the old version. Which, so far away, I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah. Always good to build from scratch unless it's too much work and you can't for some reason, but always good to start over, especially in a world where you just spin them up and down and you're not installing things 5,000 times.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, there was one other little update too on the FS Logic side. So one, we mentioned that, we're not, as we do Azure Active Directory domain join, FS Logic's, the profile's not yet there for AAD join. But some things that did come out, I think, like size and megabytes when you make the change, and I'm not sure, I've got to look into how it happens, but when you make the change, I think that it's going out and actually resizing it for you. In the past, you could make the change, but you actually had to go and inflate that yourself. So I haven't tested that yet. I was kind of surprised to see that pop up this early because I thought it was going to be a little further out. I think it's the third one down, that change the VHD size.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I think some, if not all of our listeners are aware of this, but the invention of FS Logics and the ability to put that into a virtual drive and have that thing follow you anywhere across the spectrum of things that you're working on, or just be fast and accessible at a kind of a symbolic link, right? Is that the best way to say it? Access level it's just
yeah,
been game changing for those of us that have been in this industry for a long time, and we had this file transfer, a redirecting thing that we had to rely on that just never quite was optimal.
yeah. I like to say that it's kind of the smashing together of profile capability, like a roaming profile and a streamed application, if you will, and putting that profile in a VHD and keeping it hidden from the application and the OS that it's actually not local. So everything thinks that it's local. So things like OneDrive and Teams and other applications that are kind of finicky about where their repository is, they'll all work, when they're put in a container. And that
So,
tends to be pretty good.
so help me with that on FS Logics. I was under the impression early on that it wouldn't go in between different profile or different operating system versions universally. It does though, right? It goes from Windows 10X to Windows 10Y, and then now Windows 11, and that seems to be no issue.
Yeah, these version changes in Win 10, and I haven't tested Win 10 to Win 11 just to see if there's any profile issues. I will, by our next meeting, hopefully have an answer to that. But yeah, we've always had issues like when we would say, Win 7 to Win 10, that was problematic. Some things may work, some things may not, but it'd be better to get a new profile. But yeah, these iterative changes in Win 10, we found that FS Logics can handle that fairly well.
So Rob, dumb question for me. I'm not in the trenches as much as I used to be, but do you still do folder redirection type stuff, or you just let everything ride in the FS Logics virtual drive?
We still see a little bit, it depends, right, on your architecture, because like in on-prem environments, you may have reasons why the data needs to go out to different places for backup and recovery. If you're leveraging OneDrive, it gets a little bit trickier, right? Because if it's all in OneDrive anyway, then maybe some of those folder redirects, we're seeing customers are doing less of that. And even some of the custom folders for specific applications, they're just pointing those back to OneDrive in some cases. So it depends, right? And again, FS Logics is something that you could leverage on-prem in your Citrix and VMware environments, or in your cloud environment, either way, because
All the above.
it works both. Yeah.
So I have kind of a question for you regarding FS Logics. What about like user initiated install? So not just application data, but if I give users in a non-persistent world access, can they go install an application, and can it be captured within the FS Logics drive?
No, not yet. We're looking at maybe that might be something we see in the future with would really be a feature of app attach, right, where it would be a writable volume. Today, what we're seeing with app attach is that FS Logics will keep some of the settings related to those apps in the container, in the profile container. But today we really don't have those writable volumes. Today, something similar to a PVD or a writable user volume. Not yet.
Yeah, well, you mentioned PVD. That used to be the answer, and that wasn't even 100%. And I know that space is near and dear. Is there anything out there that truly allows you to do that today that you would depend on to roll out thousands of desktops?
So that, as far as I know, there's a couple options, but I don't think that I've seen 100% success with either. I mean, VMware has one, and Citrix has UPD, or not UPD. Is that it? User.
I don't know what the marketing term is, but the Unity stuff that evolved into user personalization disk or whatever.
Yeah. and UPD used to be, wasn't that a Microsoft thing in the past? But yeah, I think that's still a difficult thing to, to capture everything, at least today.
Yeah. So in that case, you're like, just go persistent for now, and hopefully by the time you revisit it, there'll be something real.
Yeah, hopefully. But I think we've been saying that for, I don't know, a number of years. There used to be one of the closest things I saw. There was a company, Mocha 5, that had something that was pretty cool. But again, it was kind of local, but it ran and it put it into its own disk. So it kind of straddled the fence. But yeah, I still haven't seen it. And I'm basing it more on customer feedback that they can get some things to work, but not everything.
Yeah. Well, Rob, I appreciate you going down that path with me. It's good to talk to you as always, and we'll do this again in about a month.
Awesome. Good talking with you, Andy.
All right. Hey, Citrix is going to have a sales kickoff. I hope maybe in your new role, you can find a way to get there. If not, we'll see you soon, I hope.
Sales kickoff. Cool.
In person.
In person. Can't wait.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Enjoy it.
Thanks, Andy.